couple of other things I want to talk about this morning before we finish hour number one of the program. Of course, second hour is still coming up. We have this primary going on in South Carolina tomorrow. We also have a caucus coming up in Nevada. And it's very, very close. Unlike the Republicans, Donald Trump's lead supposedly has been shrinking in South Carolina. Ted Cruz has been closing some ground on him. But if you're a Democrat in South Carolina, Hillary Clinton has a massive lead, at least in the polls right now. That is because Hillary Clinton is going to get a very, very big boost from black Americans who are Democrats living in South Carolina. Bernie Sanders apparently does not have much of an appeal in that community. Well, he's an old white guy with Albert Einstein type of hair, and people look at him, I guess, and say that he's cold and unfeeling, even though he says he's going to give everybody everything for free. Apparently that does not yet appeal to people in South Carolina of color. On the other hand, in Nevada, he is now within, I saw a poll yesterday, now within 1 point of walking away with a Nevada caucus victory. It may come down to a coin flip again, although Mrs. Clinton usually supplies the coins, as we've discovered, and she's got Debbie Wasserman Schultz's face on both sides, and because of the size of that nose, that coin only flips one way. This is Hillary Clinton speaking in Nevada, and she's trying to rally the troops and create some enthusiasm. I'm not suggesting that there's much enthusiasm whenever she speaks, but you know what? At least among the women in comfortable shoes, and as we say, among people of color, she does well.
How many of you already know where your caucus site is? I love it. How many of you could bring friends, relatives, neighbors?
Ah! Like a Howard Dean scream there, isn't it? Sort of. Yeah, we remember that. She was also doing a town hall meeting with Sanders last night, and she was asked about her position on same-sex marriage. There was a time, remember, her husband signed the Defense of Marriage Act, and in 2008, when she was campaigning, she had a position that would be much closer to that of, let's say, I don't know, Franklin Graham's. And then all of a sudden, the wind direction changed, and like a lot of people in politics, Hillary Clinton wetted an index finger, put it up in the air, and said, aha! She was speaking about this issue last night.
I, like many Americans, have evolved, and I'm glad I have.
What has she evolved into? Well, a lot of people have said that about her all her life anyway. 8:55, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. If you'd like to reach our program today, 736-0300, 736-0300. The talking heads that you see on television are saying if Sanders manages to remotely close the gap in South Carolina, where her lead is something like 60-30, the other 10%, I guess, are still voting for Martin O'Malley or who was it, Jim Webb? All of the people have already dropped out. But if he manages to close it down to about 20 or 15%, that her campaign is going to be in serious, serious trouble. We've got a caller joining us. You're up next. You're on the air on News Radio 1310, KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, years ago, Joseph Wambaugh wrote a great book called Lions and Shadows, where the police departments and the sheriff's department would go out in no man's land and protect the people that were coming across the no man's land from the different gangs that were exploiting them. And also a wall on the border would protect the Mexicans from fast and furious guns going back there, and also drug money that goes back and pays off the sheriffs and the police departments. And once they get in charge, the good citizens will never get their country back, or their county, or their city, or their town.
That's a good point to be made. Just hey, quickly, I want to thank you for the call, but I just saw the bulletin. Harper Lee has died. If you don't know the name, she wrote the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and she was just controversially in the news again last fall because there has been a book published which was an earlier manuscript that she wrote before she reworked it into To Kill a Mockingbird, which was called a prequel, but it was about the characters in the story 20 years after To Kill a Mockingbird, and it really irritated people who had identified with her fictional character Atticus Finch, played in the movie version of the story by the liberal Gregory Peck. and people had come to believe that this character was almost real life. And yet, in the book that came out last fall, Atticus Finch was a Klan member, which irritated people to no end. But she has died. The woman was in the neighborhood of 90 years old. Just saw the bulletin on that a moment ago. 8:57, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. One more hour of the program still ahead. We're playing musical politicians. I made the offer to one state representative to appear on the program with us in the next segment of the show. I did not hear back from the representative. Knowing how things go, I'll get a breathless call at 9:05 saying, I'm supposed to be on the air. Well, so if he calls us, we'll be joined by Richard Wills, but if he does not, we'll try and schedule him yet on another day. Before that, though, we have a newscast coming up from Fox. You'll likely hear more about the death of Harper Lee during the course of that newscast. And as I say, one more hour with Bill Colley ahead, whether you can stand it or not.